Being an African American student at a predominantly white institution can be a challenge at times. Not knowing or fully understanding the world around you while trying to grow into the person you aspire to be. At Indiana University, the percentage of African American students is about 4.5%. Out of 94,000 students university-wide, African American students barely even make up a handful of the university's population. In 2015, 1,185 students reported that they felt underrepresented at Indiana University, while in 2018, 1,300 students reported that they felt underrepresented. For the past several years, Indiana University has been pushing the diversity initiative, expanding studies on different cultures, opening culture centers, accepting more minorities into the university, and even providing extra funding to students who are in need. But sometimes this isn't enough, and our African American students feel left out. Being welcomed and feeling welcomed are two different things. Indiana University welcomes African American students, but the reality and environment of Indiana University doesn't always feel welcoming. A certain amount of weight is placed on the shoulders of African American students, and we carry it around every day.
I think there is definitely this expectation that we have to do better just because there's so few of us and we have to try to prove ourselves, which isn't like the right way to go about things, but it's kind of how it is. Like, we constantly have to prove to our white counterparts that we deserve to be here just as much as they do. So I do feel like when I walk into a class and I'm the only black person in there, and say we're talking about some issue that has to do with black people, like, I always constantly feel like I should say something, or like I have to be more involved in those conversations. And then, like, double whammy, like, I'm also Muslim, and that's also another underrepresented group, especially on campus. Like, when things like Islamophobia come up, I feel like I constantly have to defend that, or again, like, be a part of the conversation. And like, it all comes into academics, like, because we do talk about those things a lot, especially in the classes that I take. And like I said before, like, I constantly feel like I have to prove myself or defend my race or my religion or my ethnicity.
I am diversity. Please include me. I'm present in every place you go. Depending on your lens, I'm your friend or your foe. I am a force to be reckoned with. Like the winds of change, I move. I'm swift. I'm present when two or more are together. If embraced, I can make the good even better. I am not limited to age, gender, or race. I'm invisible at times and yet all over the place. Do not exclude me due to a lack of knowledge. Welcome me like the recruit fresh out of college.
Being black, female, Muslim, when I look at my professors, I don't see that in my professors. So the people that I want to, or I would want to be talking about certain topics or teaching me about certain things, aren't the people that I'm seeing. IU constantly talks about diversity and inclusion, but where is that with your staff, And where is that with the board of trustees? Like, just a lot of the leadership or administration isn't representative of who IU says they are. There are very few minority groups. There's enough of them to be represented in the administration, in the staff, in the leadership, and they need to do better.
There's a lot of weight put on, I feel, black students, because it's kind of like there's stereotypes made about black people, and those stereotypes can be for anybody. And so I feel like there's an extra weight for black students trying not to fall into the stereotypes, which is a lot harder. If I have to feel like I have to do good, I have to get good grades, because if I don't get good grades, I'm just going to be, that dumb black kid, or that stereotype of black kids aren't smart. Rather, if I was white, if I did bad in school, it would not be a big deal. It'd just be like, oh, it's college, but that we don't have that same like privilege kind of to slack in college, I feel, because we'll always be looked bad, and so there's a lot of pressure put on Black students at a PWI.
I definitely feel like there is a weight put on me because I'm a Black student at a predominantly white institution, simply because I know that racism is not just this ancient metaphoric thing that happened oh so long ago. Things of like apartheid, segregation, and things that are still happening now in the world. The racial climate is very unsettling at this time. Sometimes I feel like I shouldn't speak as much in class because I don't want to be the overbearing minority student to force myself to feel like I have to overcompensate to show that I'm smart to my peers. Other times I feel like I'm not speaking up enough, so I feel like I'm looked at as not participating or doing well as a student. And it's always been a pressure. I mean, growing up in a household where my parents were both immigrants from a small country in Africa, Guinea, I always had this standard for myself, and that a standard that my parents forced on me and pushed on me. So moving away from my parents to a completely different city, it challenged me for the most part, because not only are you a minority, but sometimes you go through things just because you're a person, just because of life, and being the only Black student in class can be very challenging. And sometimes it could be very rewarding because you can give insight to your peers and to your teachers. So I never allowed myself after the first few months to feel minimized, but sometimes I do.
I'm sure if you look around your class right now, can you count the amount of Black students in your class on one hand? Majority of my classes, I can count the number of Black students on one of my hands compared to my white counterparts who don't even really have to think if they're the minority in a class because they make up almost 70% of the campus.
I feel like we are unrepresented at IU because they don't expect us to be here. They expect us to like give up for like one semester and just drop out, and they think that it's just hard for us to get adjusted to college, but we won't give them the satisfaction, especially I won't. But yeah, I feel like we are unrepresented because of our race.
I definitely feel underrepresented at IU University, not only as a Black student, as a Black woman, as a Black Muslim. I feel like not only are we the 4%, but I know IU is trying to push this diversity initiative, but I feel like, not that I was bamboozled or anything when I came here, but I definitely felt like that diversity that I thought I was going to be exposed to was completely different when I came to university. I just don't understand how. I definitely feel underrepresented because, in a way, just being a 4%, like 4% out of 100%, like it's definitely it can be very overwhelming, but sometimes it's very special in a way because Black IU, we hold each other accountable for a lot of things. We're a family, we're a big family, but sometimes it does get overwhelming because I don't only want to be the only Black student in class, and it's very unfortunate to say that years later, I mean, this university is going to celebrate its 200 bicentennial, if I'm not mistaken, next year. And we still only have 4% representation of Black students. Now, I can't really speak for any other race or ethnicity group, but I would like to see a change in that. I want that 4% to be a 10%, a 40%, maybe 50 one day, I don't know. But I definitely feel underrepresented as a Black woman, as a Black Muslim.
Diversity at IU for me entails students from different walks of life, different parts of the world, different parts of the country, coming together just to learn in a common space. I think Indiana University has been working really hard to bridge the gap between the educational needs of minorities within the state of Indiana as well as the global huger community, where you have students who are really looking to find a space where they can again open up their minds and to know individuals from a space that they might not have otherwise encountered, because we have a lot of very ethnocentric communities, even within a minority community. So you have folks who, if you're Latino, you kind of stick within your silo in that way. Or if you're African American, you typically have your, again, neighborhoods that are kind of locked in ethnically with those groups. So I think at a college campus, and Indiana University in particular, we try to find ways to integrate not only multicultural education, but education that's integrated in terms of the classroom structure, as well as in terms of the social setting. So we do have, again, spaces like the Neil Marshall Black Culture Center, we have La Casa, the Asian American Culture Centers, the Native American Culture Center. So these are spaces, the First Nations rather, center. So spaces where students get acclimated to during their orientation processes, and they just know that they exist. So when you talk about holding space and providing spaces, holding spaces is one of those things that you can do as an educator and instructor like myself, where you provide space in the classroom for groups to collaborate and get to know one another, so they don't remain kind of autonomous and individual and kind of closed off. But in terms of IU, you create actual spaces, physical structures where you get students to collaborate. So diversity at IU is progressing, but it can definitely be better. For me, knowing students by name, knowing, what they're doing. I know for a 200-person class, it's kind of difficult, but in some way we have to establish individual or intimate, relationships with students where we're getting to know their daily ins and outs. Intimate just means, again, understanding how someone might feel walking in the door, or if someone has recently, been absent from class. How do we follow up with that in a way that's not accusatory, or in a way that's, insensitive? And so I'm not one to necessarily coddle students, but I'm one that is compassionate. And I think in a classroom space, when you talk about holding space, you're compassionate towards the daily living of folks, you're compassionate towards life's trials and tribulations, but you're also understanding that every individual student, regardless of classroom size, comes with their own story, comes with their own contribution. And if we honor that, if we actually require students to manifest that, so actually by the time 16 weeks is up, you're bringing those things out, or they've come out in some way, whether it's through a comment you made in class, or through a project that you did with a group, or an individual assignment where you had a breakthrough in one of your writing assignments. That is the ultimate goal for me.
Acceptance and representation are valuable things to have in a society and a thriving environment. With such a low percentage of our campus being African American, some opportunities we are limited to. Others invite us with open arms. On Indiana University's campus, African American students can look for representation in our Black Frats, the historical Neil Marshall Culture Center, the Black Student Union, and even in our AAAD courses that focus on the African American diaspora. To my African American peers, I would like to say, push forward. You know your worth. I know your worth. And with this film, I hope that those viewing know your worth and can understand the drought in our representation at Indiana University.